Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So in the previous videos, we looked at our previous video, excuse me, we looked at environmental economics and how can there be a much larger cost, right, to actual goods and services if we were to take in to account the impact on the environment. So continuing on kind of this conversation of economy is how do you measure economic success? Of course, we can't talk about economic success without talking about our sweet, sweet GDP, right? So the GDP stands for our gross domestic product. This is a primary indicator that's used to gauge the health of a country's economy. It's used to represent the total dollar value of all goods and services over a specific time period. So an example perhaps you've heard is that if GDP is up 2% from one quarter to the next, then we generally say that the economy has grown by 2%, right? So this graph here is just showing, this was a random graph that was generated, or not random graph, but one that I got off the internet. Just looking at the percent change in real GDP by part of the world. So the blue line being the US, EU, and Japan, and then the rest of the world being the red line. So we can see the really beautiful 2009 crash that perhaps you lived through. I know I sure did. And it is something that kind of goes up and down, right? It's not generally in a constant upward motion. We have highs and we have our lows, right? So oftentimes we will really hammer in on a location if they're maybe not doing as well economically. But some folks have argued that the GDP has flaws, or using this as a metric to determine a country's success. There could be some holes in the story, right? And before we really dive into this, an analogy that I think works nicely here is that, in a car, when you are you have the speedometer, right? So that tells you how fast you're going. It tells you if you're going fast or you're going slow. Again, assuming it's all in all working order. But it does not tell you the actual health of the car, right? It doesn't tell me if your check engine light is on or if your tire pressure is not great or whatever, right? But it does still tell you how fast your car is going. So some flaws in the GDP include that anything that increases the flow of money is treated as a positive, right? So even if it has a negative impact on society, I feel like we are like almost constantly kind of bamboozled by this in a way. Maybe not bamboozled is not the right word, but these large companies are constantly just making sure that they make more money. Even if they have, doesn't really matter if they have a negative impact. Like fast fashion industry, you got Shein, Zara, Forever 21. They're just like, hey, I'm making money. Let's go, 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 go. Without realizing that there's negative impacts on the environment as well. Or the big one in the news more recently is about Boeing and creating airplanes, right? So they're kind of cutting corners a little bit, which is not great, right? You don't really want to cut corners on things that carry lots of humans in a giant flying tube 36,000 feet above the surface of the earth, right? So that's, a concern. And even the gas and oil industry is a prime example as well. It also does not take into account for the depletion of natural resources. So we don't really, you don't have like a full stock of how much you actually have. We only have like relative ideas, and sometimes the amount of something we have left is not fully known, right? Or does not account for pollution. Again, going back into that idea as well, right? So lots of transportation means you're emitting a lot of pollution into the atmosphere, or even water pollution, noise pollution, light pollution, all of those things. It also does not really value things within the marketplace. In reality, right? Does not take into account the distribution of income and wealth. We are really, again, shining in on this idea. We have very few billionaires and many millions of people living just barely within the poverty line. So there's really not a decent distribution, at least here in the United States. And it also, lastly, does not distinguish between real income and income generated from financial transactions. So kind of interesting, I believe, in this. So there are some solutions that are out there. I have not really fully looked in. There's probably more solutions. I encourage you to maybe think about some or maybe do a little bit further research. But here's a couple of links here that are also linked on the Canvas page that show just a couple of examples. Excuse me. And this is what some of them look like. So is our love affair of GDP coming to an end as we reinvent ourselves? Fourth industrial revolution, yada, yada. So just kind of interesting on the World Economic Forum webpage, as well as, forget the GDP. This is an article written. This one's kind of dated. So I wonder if there's been any progress there, and then of course beyond the GDP as well. So there are folks out there who are trying to have some conversations about is there a better way that we can measure economy or measure the growth and prosperity of regions, which is always our goal, right? Everyone wants to be prosperous and doing well. So this is just trying to figure out a way to do so, where maybe we can take these other things into account, kind of get rid of some of those flaws from other methods of measuring economy. And so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.